I'd like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to the sport. I really appreciate it. I think it's great. I know sometimes it's tough when you're playing against a home crowd, but I think that it's great for the sport. So keep being enthusiastic and keep rooting for your player. Yeah.
Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. Tap that like button right now and subscribe to this channel immediately, because the number we are about to lead with is going to stop you cold regardless of how closely you have been following this story. World number 32. That is where Alexandra Eala sits in the WTA rankings after her Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships campaign came to an end in the quarterfinals. She arrived in Dubai ranked 47th. She is leaving ranked 32nd. That is a 15-spot jump from a single tournament in which she did not win the title, did not reach the final, and lost her last match to the third seed in straight sets. And yet, world number 32. A new career high. The highest ranking ever achieved by any Filipino tennis player in the history of the open era of professional tennis. Not just the highest she has personally reached, the highest any player from her country has ever climbed in the modern history of this sport. She walked into Dubai and walked out having made history despite losing. If that sentence does not immediately make you want to know everything about what comes next, then you have not been paying attention to one of the most extraordinary athletic stories currently unfolding anywhere in professional sport. Let us start by making sure everyone fully understands what this ranking jump actually means, because the number 32 carries significance that goes far beyond the simple satisfaction of a career milestone. The math behind a 15-spot jump from a single tournament requires understanding how WTA ranking points are distributed across the hierarchy of events. WTA 1000 tournaments, the tier in which Dubai sits, just below Grand Slams in prestige and points value, award 215 ranking points for a quarterfinal finish. That is a number genuinely difficult to accumulate at lower-tier events even across multiple weeks of consistent results. In 1 week in Dubai, without lifting the trophy and without playing a final, Eala gathered ranking points that could have taken months of grinding through smaller tournaments to replicate. The system rewards players who perform at the biggest stages, and Eala performed at the biggest stage available to her. The 15-spot jump is the direct and logical consequence of that performance, and the number 32 it produced is not just satisfying as personal history. It is operationally transformative for the rest of her season in ways that make the rest of the WTA Tour very uncomfortable. Here is why 32 is the specific number that changes everything. 32 is the seeding threshold at Grand Slams. Being ranked inside the top 32 guarantees a seeded position at all 4 major tournaments: the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. What seeding means practically is that the draw is structured to prevent you from facing another seeded player until at least the 3rd round. The tournament's best players cannot be placed in your section of the bracket until the field has been reduced by at least 2 rounds of play. For Eala, this is not an abstract procedural benefit. This is a structural advantage with direct, concrete consequences for how every Grand Slam she enters for the remainder of 2026 unfolds. The French Open becomes the most immediate and most exciting conversation. She lost in the first round of Roland Garros in 2025, a result that will disappear from the memory bank very quickly if she arrives in Paris as a seeded player and makes the kind of run her game on clay is more than capable of producing. Instead of potentially drawing a top 10 seed in round 1 or round 2, she receives a protected path into the 3rd round as a minimum guarantee. For a player whose record against elite opposition now sits at 3 wins and 3 losses, getting to the 3rd round before facing genuine resistance is not just an advantage. It is potentially a platform for the deepest Grand Slam run of her career. But before Paris and the clay season, there is the American swing, and this is genuinely where the story gets so exciting it is difficult to contain. Indian Wells begins on March 4th. The Miami Open follows on March 17th. Both are WTA 1000 mandatory events. Every top player in the world is required to be there. The points on offer are among the highest available outside of Grand Slams, And the crowds at both venues carry something that gives Eala a genuine, documented, and quantifiable competitive advantage that her opponents simply cannot access from their side of the net. The Filipino community in California and Florida is enormous, passionate, and extraordinarily well-organized in its support. When Eala plays in America, the experience does not resemble a standard professional tennis match where a politely appreciative audience applauds clean winners and gasps at unforced errors. It resembles a basketball playoff game in a city whose team is still alive. The noise is different. The energy is different. The flags are everywhere. And Eala herself has said publicly that playing in America never feels like playing away from home. That psychological and emotional fuel is real, it is documented across her American results, and it compounds at every critical moment in close matches when tired legs need something to draw from that technique and fitness alone cannot always provide. The Miami history is where every conversation about Eala's ceiling needs to anchor itself, because what she did there in 2025 was so extraordinary that it still defies easy summary. She entered as a wild card, a player whose ranking was so low she would not normally have made the main draw at all, receiving special entry as an organizational decision rather than an earned qualification. And then she beat Yelena Ostapenko. Then she beat Madison Keys, ranked 5th in the world. Then she beat Iga Swiatek, the world number 1, in straight sets, breaking her serve 8 times across 2 sets and forcing 19 unforced errors in the opening set alone. She reached the Miami Open semifinals as a wild card ranked outside the top 100. She beat the best player in the world in a match that was not particularly close. Read that back as many times as necessary before moving forward, because the scale of what that performance represented needs to be fully absorbed before you can appreciate what it means that she is returning to Miami in 2026 not as a wild card ranked outside the top 100 but as a seeded player ranked number 32 with a career high and 15 months of additional elite-level competition experience sitting underneath her. These are categorically different propositions. What she accomplished from the weaker starting position is already the stuff of legend. What she might accomplish from the stronger one is genuinely open-ended. The points mathematics toward the top 20 are the part of this story that is making rivals do uncomfortable calculations of their own. The gap between world number 32 and world number 20 sits at approximately 800 to 1,000 ranking points, a number that sounds large until you place it next to the points available on the American swing. A quarter-final finish at each of Indian Wells and Miami delivers roughly 240 combined points. Not enough on its own for a top 20 breakthrough, but a semi-final finish at either event delivers 390 points per tournament. 2 deep runs across California and Florida, runs that her game is demonstrably capable of producing, as Miami 2025 proved beyond any reasonable argument, could realistically put her inside the top 25 before the clay season begins in April. A genuine Cinderella run in Miami, the tournament she has already proven she loves and that loves her back, could push her to the edge of the top 20 before the French Open draw is even made. The structural advantages she now carries into both tournaments compound in ways that are easy to underestimate if you are not deeply familiar with how a 96-player draw operates. A seeded player in a field of 96 receives a bye in the first round, while unseeded opponents are grinding through opening matches, accumulating physical wear, revealing tactical tendencies to future opponents, and sometimes picking up minor physical complaints that snowball across a tournament week. A seeded Eala begins in the second round fully rested and having had the opportunity to watch her next opponent compete. That structural gift compounds across multiple rounds. The player who arrives at the third round fresh has a different set of options available than the player who arrives already carrying 2 matches of accumulated fatigue. This is not a minor procedural footnote. This is the kind of marginal advantage that, across a long tournament, separates early exits from deep runs. The Dubai quarterfinal against Goff, while ultimately a loss, also produced useful and specific information about where Eala's game currently sits and what targeted improvements over the next 3 weeks before Indian Wells can accomplish. The fitness management issue, looking physically spent in the quarterfinal despite having played fewer total minutes than Goff across the tournament, is an addressable problem. Recovery protocols, training load adjustments, and the sophisticated physical preparation resources available at the Rafa Nadal Academy are designed precisely for this kind of challenge. The serve development is a longer project, but the trajectory is clearly visible and the coaching staff around Eala understands both the urgency and the process. What Dubai confirmed most powerfully is the dimension of her game that cannot be coached onto a whiteboard and cannot be acquired through any training regimen: the mental infrastructure. Beating Jasmine Paolini 6-1, 7-6 in a tiebreak after converting a match point on the fifth attempt, after watching 4 previous opportunities disappear, after standing at the edge of elimination and finding a forehand winner up the line to close it out. That is the psychological profile of a player who does not break when the match gets genuinely difficult. Most players at 20 years old facing that sequence of missed match points in a quarterfinal at a WTA 1000 event against a top 10 seed find something in their mechanics that fractures under the accumulated pressure. Eala found a winner. That mental resilience either exists in a player or it does not. In Eala's case, it demonstrably exists. Dubai confirmed it in the most visible and high-stakes conditions available. The broader historical significance of world number 32 deserves its final and proper acknowledgement, because it extends well beyond rankings and tournaments into something that matters at a cultural and generational level. Tennis in the Philippines has carried the weight of aspiration for decades without producing a player who could sustain results at the elite professional level long enough to enter the conversation about genuine tour contenders. Eala is not just winning matches. She is establishing proof of concept for an entire country's relationship with this sport at the level where it matters most. When she picked up a racket at 4 years old, when her parents made the decision to send her to Mallorca as a teenager to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy, when she navigated the transition from junior Grand Slam titles to the brutal competitive realities of the professional tour, none of that was guaranteed to produce a world number 32. The 31 players ranked above her each have their own story of sacrifice and commitment. Eala's story has produced a number that nobody from her country had ever seen before. And Indian Wells is 3 weeks away. Drop your hottest takes in the comments right now. Do you think Eala can break into the top 20 before the French Open? How deep do you see her going at Indian Wells and Miami? And do you believe the rivals looking at that number 32 next to her name are genuinely worried about what is coming? Smash that like button to push this story everywhere it deserves to go. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss a single moment of what promises to be the most exciting stretch of Eala's career to date, and share this video with every tennis fan you know. The history has already been made.